Hey, what's going on, guys? So as you know, a couple weeks ago, unfortunately, the compressor that I was using broke down all of a sudden. Now, may it rest in peace. It served me well for a couple years. That's all fine. And I found myself in need of a new one, and very fortunately for me, I was able to get a brand new compressor here that the good folks at Sparmax have been so kind to send to me. So first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to Sparmax. And the reason why I decided to go with Sparmax was because I'd heard a lot of really great things, especially from my friends down in Australia. Ryan there at Hobbyco has always talked great things about them, and my friends Lincoln and Aaron down there in Australia as well also use the brand and have said good things about the company. If you guys are unfamiliar, Sparmax also owns Iwata, so I'm sure probably a lot of you guys have maybe, especially in the States, probably more so heard of Iwata, maybe more than Sparmax, but actually Sparmax Enest owns Iwata as well. So from what I've heard, the quality should be at least as good, if not better, than Iwata stuff. So I've always heard good things about Iwata brand stuff. I have the airbrush that I use is actually an Iwata brush. So I believe they sent me a compressor and also a new airbrush in here to use as well. So I'm going to get this stuff installed so we can get back to painting. I've got a couple of works in progress and a couple of kits lined up that need to be painted, so we got a lot of work to catch up on. So I'm really glad that this stuff has come in. Now we can get back to work. So let's check it out. Okay. And within the box here is the air compressor here. So it's the air compressor TC-620X. So it's able to be used with either 220 or 240 volt. That includes 3 different airbrush adapters for Aztec, Badger, and Pash. I'm not sure if that's actually the correct pronunciation for that, but just to go over some of the stats there, it's got information about the airflow, the 1.6 HP AC motor. It's got auto on-off. It has a 2.5 liter air tank. The weight 10 kilograms, 10.4 kilograms. It's got numbers there for the size. It's got a pressure gauge, pressure regulator, moisture trap, 2 airbrush holder, 2 air outlets, and air hose. So it looks like pretty much everything you need to run very comfortably 2 airbrushes off this. So let me bring the box down here. Once again, I'll move it out of the way so I can pull the stuff out here. And this handle at the top makes it a little bit easier to pull out of the box at least. All right, so let's go through all of this stuff here. So the first thing is the user's manual. It's pretty simple. You've got this here, just a couple of pages front and back. In this bag are the adapters in case you use a different brand airbrush. You'll be able to use those. It looks like we've got 2 of these hoses. Just to pop this open, as you can see, they're just these mesh hoses here, and they seem pretty comfortable. This is actually exactly what I use. It's not the same color, but this is what I use currently, and I definitely prefer this over like the just the kind of rubber tube curly ones, you know? So that's nice. I'll just change out my all black one for a couple oranges, or use the black one that I have and use one of the orange, so that way it's very easy to tell the 2 different brushes apart. So I'll use like the orange one for my Sparmax brush or something, for example. This is going to be our 2 little plastic pieces that will be your airbrush stands, which I could think will probably just plug onto the top of the compressor there. We'll see here in a moment. Here we've got 2 different kind of airbrush models from them. This one is going to be kind of your standard dual action airbrush here. It says it has the free valve included for a dual to single action brush if you prefer that, if you don't want to use the dual action. Dual action just means that you can control the paint flow and the airflow both with the trigger there. So we'll maybe talk more about that later. So this is I guess there's the MAX-2 or the MAX-3, different versions of that here, and it looks like this is the MAX-3, so that means a little bit larger nozzle. The MAX-2 is a 0.25, this one is a 0.3 nozzle, and it has a 7 milliliter cup. The MAX-2 has just a 2 millimeter cup, so it has a much larger cup size for this one. Also preset handle, both have that, and the 1/8 PS fitting, both have that, so that's going to be the same. And then so this is just the packaging. This just slips out of here. Got this nice case for that, which has some plastic wrap. I think we can just remove that. And in here, ooh, very shiny, very nice. So you've got your key tool, and you've got the adapter there, and then the actual brush itself. I'm just taking a look at it here in hand. You can see we have our trigger there at the top, 1 action, 2 action, and the cap, just pop that off. Doesn't screw off, so that's good, just pops off. That's much better, I believe. And screw off the back end here for taking out the needle. And so there, yeah, looks pretty standard. Looks very similar, of course, to the Iwata brush that I'm using now currently. So that looks good. We'll try that out here shortly. Now the flyer here also looks quite interesting. So obviously a little bit different look. here for a brush is solvent resistant, so I guess that just means the plastic body of that going to be solvent resistant. This is a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, so it's going to have a little bit bigger nozzle for getting a wider spray if that's what you wanted. You can do that with this. And this includes one 15 milliliter glass bottle for this. This is what you're going to use to load the paint into the top of that. And I think in this extra bag here, it looks like is another bottle. Yeah, so this is just another spare bottle that you'll be able to use with that. So you've got an extra cap for that. So if you're saying you're just mixing up some paints, you don't use it necessarily all at once. Just keep it in here until later. So especially if you're using like some custom mixed color, as I often do, this actually might come very well in handy, because it's always better to make more than you need. But if you end up with some leftover, you always kind of feel bad to throw it out, and you might need a little bit more later on, so you can always just keep it in a spare bottle. You might be able to use it later. So that's the spare bottle. And just going back to the box here, you can see the special features are that it's ergonomic, lightweight, swift color swap, so you can just pop off, switch out the bottle. You don't have to clean the cup every time. Adjustable line width, that's good. No disassembly of the airbrush, no cleaning between color changes. Yeah, so that's going to be maybe quite convenient, considering that this works pretty well, but it seems like a good idea. And offhand, I don't know if any other companies make a similar product to this. I would assume that probably they do exist from other companies. I don't know, I haven't used them, and so I'm not familiar with this type of airbrush, but I'm interested in trying it out. It seems like a cool idea. So here you have just the airbrush parts, just the handle and the stand for that. It's just giving you a list of what's included, and then the user's manual here on the back of that paper. Then in here, have the actual brush, just once again some plastic wrap. Here's the stand for that, which it just has like these little pads on the bottom. It'd be cool if it had like an actual sticky strip on there. You could then like stick it onto the top of the airbrush or something, but I guess you could just get some double-sided tape or something. Be easy enough to sort that out if that's what you wanted to do. This little bit that fell out, there's the cap for this bottle here. So basically I've got 2 bottles and 2 caps. So it looks like if you like really got into using this and you're using it a lot, you probably would want to order some more bottles. So it might be something I'll look into once I get to using this. If it turns out that I quite enjoy using it, getting some more bottles seems like it'll probably be handy. Now this also, just because it's a 0.4 millimeter brush, will probably be my go-to brush for spraying larger surfaces, even though I just recently bought a new larger brush for that. At least I'll have options, and I'll be able to try this out too. So that's pretty much it. Just very simple design. You just got the trigger there, just a one button, and this plugs onto your hose there, and then it just seems pretty simple. So that is all that cool stuff. Now let's get into the actual compressor here. So essentially, it looks pretty similar to the compressor that I was using before. We just have the compressor and the tank there down below. Here we have I think that's just the release for the tank. Sometimes you just need to kind of let that drain out. It's just some kind of moisture and stuff can just gather in the bottom of the tank there. Except that it's just got this housing now around it here like this, which should be pretty convenient, just keeping it protected and just keeping it all safe in here. You've got the rubber feet down here at the bottom, just so that on your floor it's not making a ton of noise when it's working. And I've also heard that this is just a relatively quiet model anyway. It looks like we also do have some rubber padding here between the tank and the compressor as well, so that when it's shaking around in use, it won't be making a ton of noise, so that's good. Up at the top, you can see there's where our airbrush holders are gonna go, up in the top of there like that. Up here at the top is the pressure regulator knob. You just pull that up to unlock it, and then you can turn that to adjust the pressure, and then just pop it back down. So actually up top here, this is the pressure gauge for what's coming out, what will be going through your airbrush. Down here, this gauge down below is the air tank pressure gauge. So it'll just help you to know how much pressure you've got stored up in the tank at any time. And so maybe like when you're done, you usually want to just go ahead and empty that. So you can just make sure that it's totally empty once you're done using it, if you're not going to use it again for a little while. Over here is the outlet cap. And so we've got our 1-2 outlets there for plugging in 2 different airbrushes, but if you're only using one, then just keep the cap on this one, just to keep that safe. In here, this would be the moisture trap as well, so as the air is coming through there, out the compressor, and into your airbrush, this is going to be catching any moisture. That will also help to make sure you don't get any water droplets in your paint mixture. And then you've got the release valve for that. So again, every so often you just want to make sure you hit that, just let the water drain out of that. You'll have just some drops of water, depending on how humid it is, especially where you're at. Let's move it around here onto the back. Here we have just the on-off switch right there. I actually don't really quite like that that's all the way in the back, because I usually keep this stored like under my table, so with this like in the back it'll be kind of really hard to get to actually, so I might have to rethink where I'm keeping this in my space, because if it's kind of hard to get to, the switch being in the back there might be a little bit annoying depending on how I can get this set up in my space. But then we've got your power cord, of course, you just need to pull that out of there. And actually, I was also wrong on another thing. I guess I should have checked the instructions first, like an idiot. Down here is the air tank drain valve, which you can open that up just to drain anything just nasty out of the bottom of the tank. Back around on the front, this bit down here is the air tank safety valve here, actually. So, alright, that is a look around the compressor itself. It looks good, it's very handsome, I like the color, it's black, that doesn't really matter much, but it looks cool anyway. And now we need a test, of course, so I'm gonna get this here set up in my space over there, we'll paint some stuff and we'll test it out. Alright guys, this is my regular spraying area, my spray booth there, and then down below the table, this is where my previous compressor lived, and this one will now live as well just below the table. Now, as I said, it's a little bit tricky to kind of reach back there to turn it on, but it's not that bad, it'll be okay. And then here on the top, I've got the regular airbrush here, and then the flyer back up over here on its stand, so I'll be able to get to those. Alright, so before we get into testing out the flyer here, just because I figure probably a lot of you guys know how a regular airbrush works, this one you may not know too much about, like myself, so I checked it out, read the instructions, and just kind of took it apart a little bit just to kind of familiarize myself with this. So let me just let you guys know a little bit about how it works here. So basically you have this whole bit here, which is where you're going to put the paint in there, of course. So that just unscrews and then the paint just goes into there. Now, my one concern about this is that I think this is going to be kind of a hassle to have to clean this every time. So the nice thing is if you're working on a project and you have a couple of these bottles, you know, ready with paint ready to go, but then once you're done, like, or you run out of bottles, you need a new bottle, or just you're ready to move on to the next project, cleaning these I think is going to be probably more of a hassle than just cleaning, you know, your regular just airbrush cup, which is relatively simple. But that said, so at the top there is actually two parts, and it's kind of hard to take it apart. It's better to put it in here. And so first of all, when you're spraying, you want to make sure this is pushed in all the way. But you can see here we have the plus minus on the front, and that's to increase or decrease the amount of paint that's going in. So you see is the needle where the air is coming out is down there, and then the paint is coming out through this one here. And so you can turn this a little bit like that, which will basically open up the tip there a little bit so more paint can come out, and a little bit more and more paint will come out. But you don't want to open up too much so that too much paint is coming out at once. But just for the sake of showing you guys what is inside here, we'll just unscrew this completely and pull this out just so you guys can see the assembly of it. This is actually the inner needle there where the paint will flow through, and then this outer cover basically is what gives you the difference between the two. So once that's loosened, you'll have more of a gap between this needle and this cone, and that's where the paint will come out from there for that. So not really all that important information, but just so you guys can just kind of get an idea of how this works, so you're familiar with this kind of stuff. If you've never airbrushed before and you're kind of lost as to what I'm talking about, don't worry, it's not really all that important. You just need to know that it works. So I want to try this one out first. I'm just going to load up just a little bit of primer in there, and we'll just try on a scrap piece and just kind of see how it works. You can also get a sense of how noisy or quiet it is to a degree, however much my mic is picking up now at the moment. Honestly, it's not that quiet, at least compared to the compressor that I was using before. It's kind of really about the same, so I didn't really know, you know, by comparison how loud or quiet my previous one was. I thought it was just kind of average, and this one seems to be about the same, so I wouldn't say it's definitely not like going to wake everyone up in your house, but it's not like super quiet as a mouse either, and I didn't mean that to rhyme. And really quick, one more thing about the bottles that I'm not particularly keen on is how small the hole is. So I think just pouring your paint into here, you're very likely to spill or get some around the edges and everything, and it could just be messy. I wish that the hole, just maybe the bottle, like, I mean, making the bottle itself larger is maybe not entirely necessary, because then you're getting into like a really large amount of paint you'd be able to put in there. But at least so that the hole is a little bit larger, maybe would have been nicer, just to make it easier to get paint out of there, and also make it easier to clean, because then like getting anything in there to clean is also going to be a little bit difficult. And of course, as always, you want to make sure that you're wearing a mask and that you have some proper ventilation. So I'm also going to just kick on my fan here. Alright guys, so first impression is that I feel like it's just spraying way too much paint out, and so I was adjusting this here to spray it less and less, basically to where it was just barely opened up at all, because you can close it up all the way so no paint will go through at all. But I had it open up so just barely, it was just opened, and it was still like I was getting a lot of overspray. As you can see, it wasn't like really very targeted at all. So if you're spraying like big pieces or something, maybe it'd be better. Now this is meant to be a 0.4 and I'm used to a 0.3, which is a little bit smaller nozzle, so it could be just that it's just much more than I'm used to. I didn't think the difference would be that significant. It almost felt like spraying with a spray can, because that's kind of the problem of spraying with spray cans, is that you get a pretty wide spray and you end up wasting a lot of paint, and I feel like that's what's happening with this one as well. If you're spraying, even this is like a not that small of a part, it's a relatively good sized part. So feel like this is probably something that I will maybe use for when I'm doing just like spraying my top coats especially, and I just want kind of like a wide spray over like a large area. For like doing top coats over like pre-assembled sections of a kit or something. Maybe I'll use it for priming every now and then as well, especially if I'm doing like larger parts like this, but I think for just like my regular painting, probably won't end up using this very much. But I'll try some more experiments, and I'll get some other feedback from you guys. Maybe if there's anyone out there those of you who have used this more and you've found out other kind of ways to trick that a little bit, then maybe let me know. And also confer with a couple other friends that I know have also used this if they've found other ways to utilize this for just kind of your regular kind of painting applications. But so that is the flyer, which seems like it's a cool product with a good idea, but I'm not too sure about how useful a lot of you guys will find it. That's it. I like that none of this needs to be cleaned. That can all just be fine. You just need to clean just basically this part of it, but like I said, I think it is going to be a little bit of a chore to have to clean this part. Alright, so again, as for the MAX-3, it's just pretty standard airbrush. We have the cap, the top, and then just dual action here. Press down for air, pull back for paint. Now we also have a little end stop back here at the back. Now you can adjust this forward, which will make your trigger not able to go as far back, which means you won't be able to get as much paint going through. So if you only want to do like little delicate painting, you're worried about actually pulling out too much paint by accident, then you can adjust this forward, and then you're only able to really bring it back a tiny bit, or you can adjust this much further back, and then you're able to bring your trigger all the way back for full paint to come out of there. So thank you very much. Okay, so that's a wrap. I'm definitely much more comfortable with this because this is basically the exact same thing as what I'm typically used to painting with. One thing that's different is that I was spraying on a higher PSI than I usually spray with. I had it set to around 30, and I was usually spraying before on my old one about like 18. So it's definitely a big noticeable difference between the air pressure. So I had to turn that down a little bit because it's just too much for what I'm used to. I don't think I'll ever really need to spray that high. I know some people do get like really high with their air pressure, but it just seems way too strong for me. So usually I'll probably just keep it maybe around 20. Should be plenty enough air pressure for me for this. So this airbrush is definitely going to be one that I'll be using primarily. I think I still have my Iwata airbrush actually, which I will probably still use that one as well. And then I do have a larger airbrush as well, which I may use from time to time when I need to spray larger stuff as well. But for now, the most important thing is the compressor, and I'm really happy with the compressor. I love that I can hook up two airbrushes to it at the same time. The air tank on it is nice to have, and you don't have to worry about it constantly working as it's kicked off at the moment. Well, it's still technically on, but it's not working at the moment because I don't need any air. The air tank is full. So it has a regulator, it has a moisture trap, it has everything that you would want for a compressor, and so I'm really happy with this. And of course, like I said, it looks very pretty in its cool black house. So that's gonna be a wrap for this video, guys. I hope that was informative. If you guys were interested in some of this stuff, I'll put the links to Sparmax, and you can check out all the information about the products there down below. If you're interested in seeing more about that, you can check out their website. But as for me, I got a lot of painting to catch up on, so I'm gonna get to work. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.